I don't know about you folks, but I spent the better part of my adult life looking for things like love and justice and goodness and beauty and perfection. I've looked for those things in life and relationships in the world around me and people. I haven't found those things much in people. I found it in nature, in rocks and trees and grass and running water, sunrises, sunsets. But I think I found it where it exists in its most ideal form. When you think of a newborn infant with a parent and the trust that is implicitly present as God's gift between adult and child, the absolute, total, unquestioning trust that exists there, is it not perfect in the sense of being perfect? Is it not undamaged, unspoiled, flawless, perfect? I don't think human beings can approach perfection any closer than that which exists between a newborn infant and their parents. But what we don't often realize as parents is that trust can be destroyed at a very young age. Betrayal of trust in kids is one of the most devastating things we can do to them. It makes their world unsafe. It makes their existence uncertain. It makes everything about them unpredictable. Betrayal of basic trust. If you have ever been betrayed in your life, you know what I'm talking about. It could take a lifetime, if ever, to overcome the effects of betrayal. And abused kids are betrayed kids, profoundly betrayed kids. And by far the most damaging of all are double binds. A double bind is when we put a child in a situation where they must make a choice, but it doesn't matter which choice they make, they're going to experience pain, punishment, loss as a result of the choice. Double binds are no-win situations. A double bind results in internal, emotional, psychological, spiritual conflict. Double binds provoke internal, emotional, psychological, spiritual conflict. Conflict inside the heart, the mind, the body, the spirit of the child that has no resolution. There's no way to resolve it successfully or without loss or pain or suffering. So it's kind of, you're going to get it if you do, you're going to get it if you don't. Double binds are cripplers because they put a child in a situation where there's no way they can win. Let me demonstrate to you the damage done by this dynamic with abused kids. Young children know instinctively that they must trust their parents, don't they, to survive. Young children know instinctively they need their parents to survive. They know that they must remain physically intimate. They know they must remain emotionally connected with their parents. They know they must continue to please their parents to survive. Survival demands intimacy from children, doesn't it? Intimacy requires trust, doesn't it? So what happens to these young children? And they're driven by their instinct to survive when they enter into intimate physical relationship with an adult. In total trust, in total vulnerability, because survival demands it. Only to have that adult slap them, bite them, burn them, curse them, degrade them, humiliate them, assault them, beat them, rape them, so that now survival demands you don't be physically intimate with that adult. On the one hand, survival demands intimacy, but because of the abuse, survival demands you don't be intimate. On the one hand, survival demands you trust that adult with your life. Because the abuse, survival demands you don't ever trust that adult with your life. On the one hand, survival demands you submit your will to the authority of that adult. But because of the abuse, survival tells you don't submit your will to the authority of that adult. On the one hand, survival tells you love that adult. They're your parent. Because of the abuse, survival demands you hate that parent. How can you both love and hate the same person at the same time in the same place? How can you both trust and not trust the same adult at the same time in the same place? That's the psychological dilemma and the spiritual dilemma of every abused child. How can you do both? When survival demands you love, when survival demands you hate, when survival demands you trust, when survival demands you don't trust. How do you do both? You don't. Instead, what you do is you develop psychiatric, psychological, emotional, behavioral symptoms as a way to cope with the intense, powerful emotions that are stirred up in you as you try to resolve that psychological dilemma. That's called a existential paradox. When survival demands contradictory responses from the same human being at the same time in the same place, that's an existential paradox. It cannot exist. It cannot be done. And yet that's the position children are placed in when they're abused. Much of the psychology, much of the psychiatry, much of the behavioral problems, emotional problems of abused children derive from coping with the intense emotions that come from trying to resolve the issue of how do you both love and hate the same person, trust and not trust the same person who's abusing you. Double binds don't hurt our kids, impair their mental health. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the severe mental, emotional abuse that I experienced as a child. My parents brought me out of the bedroom one night, the living room. My mother was sitting here, my father was sitting here. My mother said, "Phil, come give me a hug." Now that was a direct parental order. Now what would happen in a militaristic style of parenting if I disobeyed a direct parental order? Well, I'd be punished, of course. And who amongst us would criticize a parent for punishing a child for willful disobedience? Not many of us, would we? I had to obey. So I went to obey, and I put my arms around her neck to give her a hug. When I'd get close to her, she would take that, boom, she'd drive it right under my chin and knock me down. Then my father would say, "Phil, come give me a hug." That was a direct order. I had to go give him a hug. I leaned down, put my arms around his neck to give him a hug. Boom, he'd hit me in the face and the chest and knock me down. And back and forth, my parents made me go. And every time I tried to give him a hug, they'd hit me until my face was bleeding and bruised and my chest was bruised. I was lying on the floor. They called me a fool. They said I didn't have even the common sense of a common fool, because even a common fool would know not to keep running into brick walls. Well, I thought, well, obviously what they want me to do is show some common sense and not run into a brick wall. Next time the order came, "Phil, come give me a hug," what did I do? I didn't move. And what happened? I got beat for disobeying a direct parental order. Now, if that didn't scramble your psychology, nothing will. Let me give you another example. My mother asked me one day, she said, "What's your name?" I said, "My name is Phil." She said, "No, it's not. Your name is Joe." A second time she asked me, "What's your name?" I said, "My name is Phil." She said, "No, it's not. I told you your name is Joe." A third time she asked me, "What's your name?" I said, "My name is Phil." She said, "Are you calling me a liar?" I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not calling you a liar." What would happen if I called my mother a liar? Well, I would be punished, of course. I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not calling you a liar." She said, "Then what's your name?" What did I tell her? I told her what I thought she wanted to hear. I said my name was Joe, and what happened? I got beat for lying. You see, my parents were trying to teach me something very, very important, something that all of us as parents want our children to know and understand. My parents were trying to teach me to have backbone, to have the strength of character to stand up for what I knew was right, regardless of the consequences. Anything abusive about that? Of course not. We all want our children to know right from wrong and to be willing to stand up for what's right, regardless of consequences. There was nothing abusive about what my parents were trying to do. There was nothing abusive about their parenting intent or their parenting purpose or their parenting goal. What was abusive were the means they were using to accomplish their goals. It was their techniques. It was their parenting techniques that were abusive.
As we finish out this video, I just want to leave you with this thought. Dr. Phil Quinn talked about double binds, meaning a child who's been abused in such a way that they are given two choices. Either choice they make will result in pain, suffering, betrayal, etc. But we at Royal Family, we can give the kids double blessings. That means that during free time at camp, we can say, "Hey kids, do you want to go to the pool and have a great time? Or do you want to go to the arts and crafts, the activity center, and have a great time?" That is a double blessing. Either choice they make will be a great choice. Let's help these kids transition from double binds to double blessings, even triple blessings. 3 choices, and no matter what choice they make, it's going to be a great choice. That's the opportunity we have at Royal Family Kids.